Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to be working on adding the delivery widget to the main section. So let's get to it. Okay, so in this video, we're going to be focusing on building the main delivery section. So basically going from single text to this layout right here, okay? So if we have a little bit more spacing in between the search and where this will start, so we're gonna add some padding for that. And then we've got a label followed by a value directly below it in a square, like a border. And then another label next to it in the second column with the value directly under it, okay? So there's gonna be a few challenges here, or there's gonna be two specifically. The first one will be, based on the HTML that I'm about to write, how we can create a grid that lays out in this particular fashion. And the second challenge will be to do with sizing, but I'll get to that a little bit later, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the HTML and I'm going to basically create 4 divs, all right? So 4 divs like so, like this, okay? And if I come over to my original tab, you're not going to see anything right now, but that's cool. Now, for the first and third div, I'm going to give them a class of main delivery label, all right? So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to put that as the third div as well. For the second and fourth, I'm going to use main delivery choice. All right. Once again, I'll copy that and paste it here and finish it off. All right. Now, inside of each one, I'm going to put the label first here. So when, and in the second one, I'm going to put ASAP. That's going to represent this value here. And then for the next one, I'm going to have 2, and then the 1, 2, 3 Main Street. Now, why have I set up the HTML like this? Okay, where I have a label, then a value, then a label, then a value. I could have easily made it so it's just label, label, value, value, right? Well, this is more for the purpose of screen readers, okay? If you think about how a screen reader would work, they would have a label that says when, and then they would hope to find out straight after when it would be, right? So it'd be when, ASAP. Where is it going? Or in this case, to 1, 2, 3 Main Street, all right? If we were to put the labels directly under each other in the DOM, then it'd go when, to, and it'd be very confusing to the screen reader, right? So that's why I put the HTML in this fashion. Now, if I save this and we have a look at what we've got at the moment, we just have this information, right? It's just one after the other. But we want to go from this situation to this, right? Where we have basically 2 columns and 2 rows, where the labels are always in the top row and the values are in that bottom row, right? Now, don't worry so much about the sizing in the moment. We'll deal with that a little bit later, okay? I'm going to add just a little bit of CSS though, just to style some things up a bit, so we have those squared borders and things like that, right? So I'm going to come over to my CSS, and just below the main delivery container, I'm going to add a snippet of LD GC app UEC main delivery styles and tab. And basically what this gives us is it says I want a padding top of 16 pixels to go above this main delivery section. Now I already have a selector for that, so I'm just going to remove this content here and just do that. Okay. Now for the labels that we have, I'm giving them a slightly darker color, like a greeny brown color, and I'm making the font weight just a little bit more bold. And for the choices, this ASAP and 1, 2, 3 Main Street, I'm turning them into that green color, and also, I'm adding a border with that green color, and I'm adding padding. All right. So if I save this right now, this is what we get. All right. So we've got the presentation the way we want it. Now we just need to get the layout right. So let's have a look at what we've got here. So firstly, we've got the labels on top, right? But that doesn't match our DOM, right? So we can't just go grid and then let things flow naturally. We have to change the behavior or the auto placement algorithm for our grid, all right? So we need to do that. And then on top of that, we need to add some spacing between each of the tracks here. So we have 8 pixels of spacing between the column tracks and 8 pixels of spacing between the row tracks. All right. So basically a grid gap of 8 pixels. So let's start off with that. But before I go and actually implement the solution, I want you to pause the video and try this yourself. Okay. So pause it right now, give it a go, and come back to me in a moment. So were you able to work that out? If so, fantastic. If not, well, we'll go through it together right now. So firstly, I just want to quickly say, if you use grid areas or you use things like grid row or grid column to position things around, you cheated. All right, that's not the answer I was looking for. The answer was to change auto flow. So if I come over to my uber.css, I would come and say I want my main delivery container now to be a grid. And then basically for my grid, I would say I want 2 rows of max content, like so. And then for my columns, because I want to use auto flow for column based now instead of row based, I would just put auto flow followed by my track list. Now keep in mind when I use auto flow, you can't use a repeat function. So in this case, I'm just going to put 1FR and 1FR for the moment. All right. And then quickly, I'm going to add a grid gap of 8 pixels. And if I come over to my original and save, there it is. All right. We've got basically the text where we want it, or the labels, I should say. You know, it's starting from the top left, moving down, then the next one, right? Just like what we have over here, right? If I don't add auto flow, so if I keep that out and we save it, we get that result, all right, where what we expected to have was the label, then the value, then the label, then the value, all right? So that's a cool way of actually adding a label on top of an input if you ever want to do that, all right? So that's the first problem I want to deal with in this video. The second problem I want to deal with is the sizing, all right? So basically this second column, I want it to be 3 times the size of the first, but I don't want it to size or shrink any further than the content that's inside of each column, right? So basically what I'm trying to say here is, say I take it out of mobile mode at the moment and I shrink it down, all right? I never want it to be any smaller than that content that fits inside of it, okay? It can't happen that way. So that's the next step. I want you to try and see if you can get that to work. So keep in mind that the second column has to be, you know, try and make it 3 times as big as the first, all right? But it shouldn't sacrifice the content that's inside of each column, all right? So pause the video, give yourself a go at that, and come back to me in a moment. So were you able to work that out? If so, fantastic. If not, well, we'll go through it together right now. So the first thing I want to quickly show is when I come to my original tab and say I take it out of the mobile mode and I try to shrink it down to as small as I can on my machine, it doesn't really go small enough to have that ASAP be a problem, all right? So I'm going to add a little bit more text in just to basically create this problem. So I'm going to come in and go blah, 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 blah. It doesn't really matter what we type here as long as it's too much. And as you can see right now, it collapses, right? So we don't really want that. We want it to basically stay as big as possible, right? Now we know we can do that using max content, but then not only do we want to have max content, we want it to grow at a proportional rate, right? So this one needs to be, 1 fraction, and this one needs to be 3 fractions, okay? But it can't, if it can't afford to go any smaller, it shouldn't go any smaller, all right? So what I'm basically saying is I want to use the min-max function, all right? So I'm going to go min-max, all right, where the minimum size I want it to be is max content, and the maximum I want it to be is 1 fraction, all right? So when I do this, now we can see that it will grow to fill in that minimum space regardless of the size of the second element here. Okay, so at the moment, the second element is 1 fraction 2, right? So this should be equal in size, but because we've got so much content here, this second element has been forced to be a little bit bigger, all right? So I want to do the same thing on the other side though, and go min, max, and then go max content here, and make this 3FR, like so. And when I save this, well, nothing's changing at the moment because we have a lot of content. However, if I now come and remove that content away, all right, so let's say I want to take this away. I'm going to cut it out for the moment and save. Now we can see that the second column is 3 times the size of the first, all right? And as we grow it, say, I'll go back to the mobile mode that we have. Say I go to, I don't know, iPad. We can see it's the same result here. Or if we go something a little bit bigger, iPad Pro, it's still the same proportion. But if I once again add too much content, then it's going to push the first column out a little bit further. So it's not going to be a 3:1 anymore. It's going to be like a 2.8 to 1.2 or something. All right. So that's kind of what I was getting at. So, and that is basically the solution. All right. So I'm going to revert all that and get back to what we want. And if we look and compare, so if I go back to Google Pixel 2 and compare it with what we have over here, it's the same. And that's all I want to cover in this video. So I'll see you all in the next one.